Pittsburgh Steelers, a perfect transition as today we saw the rumors last night. Cousin Cordell was like, what am I seeing? Why am I seeing this? And then it became official as of this morning, as Kevin was up early at the gym, sent it at about 5:40 in the morning, that it was legit that the Pittsburgh Steelers traded wide receiver George Pickens to the Dallas Cowboys. And as the Cowboys Twitter account said it themselves, trade alert, we've agreed to terms to acquire wide receiver George Pickens and a 2027 sixth-round pick from the Steelers in exchange for a 2026 third-round pick and a 2027 fifth-round pick. So if you're doing the math at home, basically the Cowboys downgraded their 2027 pick, and they picked up a 2026 third-round pick, or the Steelers picked up a 2026 third-round pick. So it's basically George Pickens for a third-round pick and then moving a 2027 pick from the fifth round to the sixth round. Anywho, Jaevon, what was your reaction to this timely news of George Pickens becoming a Cowboy?
I want to know who Cordell's sources are. That's my real thing.
Dude, I was thinking that too.
He was like, why am I hearing this?
Follow to be in them kind of circles. Hours.
Like, what?
I mean, I know it happened at 3 in the morning, but what kind of people do you follow that have that kind of information just roaming the dark web?
That's what I'm trying to figure out, because last night he just like, why am I seeing this and this is going on? I was like, oh.
I'm thinking to myself, there's no way.
But then I saw CD tweet. CD tweeted something last night too. So that's why I was like, huh, that's interesting. So I was like, okay, didn't think anything of it. Woke up this morning and George Pickens is a Cowboy. And this couldn't be this is so on brand for him. This is so on brand for George Pickens, just what he brings to the table. I think a lot of people kind of underestimate his ability of what he's able to do on the field. I just think it's a bunch of the off the field stuff and him just throwing flying elbows to people. Like, it's just the constant banter that he has with DBs throughout the game is uncanny. And I think it gets kind of lost in the weeds of how talented he actually is, but he just lets all the extra nonsense get in the way of him actually being a really good player. And I think it does say a little bit to who's letting you go in Mike Tomlin, one of the most decorated coaches this league has seen. And when he's kind of saying, all right, well, we're going to give up on you a little. We're going to give up on you. And what is this league? This is he's going to year 3 or 4, if I'm not mistaken. He is expected to be getting a contract, according to Cordell. And I think he's going to try and want a little bit of money. And I don't think the Steelers were willing to give him some. Here, come here. And so I just think that when it comes to Pickens being on the Cowboys, I think it's going to be very interesting because CeeDee Lamb was doing everything by himself last year. It was just him, please go out and give us 1,800 yards. We have nothing else. We have literally nothing else. Dak was out for the majority of last year. I'd say like half of last year. So it was just kind of CeeDee Lamb and everybody else. And so now he has a running mate. And a lot of people don't really know that I think he's undrafted, the Oregon wide receiver, Shaun Holden. I think he's going to be really good for them as well. They drafted a running back in Jaden Blue, the Texas receiver. So I think it'll be very interesting to see how this offense is going to look going forward.
And for the audio-only listeners, we just had a guest appearance of Mako Toddy, the next generation, letting his voice be heard on how he feels about the Pittsburgh Steelers trading away. Arguably, I don't know, Kevin, that's how we can spin it forward. Before this trade, was George Pickens the number 1 wide receiver on the Steelers, or was he number 2 since they acquired DK Metcalf? Because what I didn't understand about this trade was the fact that the Steelers had a wide receiver problem. They just lacked depth. Cordell, Steelers fan, says, I'm comfortable with our wide receiver room right now. As a 49ers fan, I could say the same with Brandon Ayuk as our number 1 wide receiver and a bunch of other guys. And that's Brandon Ayuk coming off of a serious injury. So I don't know if I necessarily believe him when he says that he's comfortable with his wide receiver room. But the Steelers had 2 strong wide receivers with DK Metcalf and George Pickens. Now it seems like, as I was saying in our group chat, Mike Tomlin seems to have PTSD from AB, as in Antonio Brown, and just how that kind of flamed out. And so he's trying to get ahead of it and trade George Pickens before the locker room becomes a problem, because he's trying to have a locker room of accountability and just rebuild it with a winning team. But I just don't really understand it. So what was your reaction to this, Kevin? But also, would you have said that Pickens was the number 1 wide receiver on the Steelers before this trade, or was it DK Metcalf? So just all that.
Before the trade, he was definitely the number 2 receiver. You don't bring in a guy like DK Metcalf to be the number 2 guy. And it says a lot. Toddy mentioned it. Mike Tomlin's a guy who takes diamonds and takes diamonds out of the rough. He'll turn you into something. And it just goes to show that, the Chris Claypools, the Antonio Browns, the Deontay Johnsons, and now the George Pickens, they've had their own head cases of wide receivers, and they were able to move off of these guys. And then we saw them kind of fall off. We saw AB go to the Raiders and have his fiasco, ended up on the Jets, had his fiasco, or the Bucs, had his fiasco. And then we saw Deontay Johnson leave the Steelers, and he was on 4 teams last year. Chris Claypool came on, and he was supposed to be this next big thing. I don't think he's in the league anymore. So they had a lot of turnaround in that receiver room. But focusing on George Pickens, he has been a guy who has had 10 fines in his 3 seasons. So to have a guy like Mike Tomlin tell you that we've had enough, I feel awful for Brian Schottenheimer. I know I might have butchered that name, Schottenheimer. I don't know if I said it the right way, but for him to be a first-year coach and you have to deal with this, you hear all the stuff about dealing with Jerry and dealing with Dak and dealing with CD, dealing with Micah, and now you have to add George Pickens to the mix. And like I said, he's a guy who's had 10 suspensions in the first 3 years. He's had his injury problems, and a lot of people will say that he didn't have a quarterback, but you can't really say that because his past 2 quarterbacks in Justin Fields and Russell Wilson are starting quarterbacks in New York. CeeDee Lamb last season had 72 more catches than the number 2 receiver. So I get it. It's nice to say that you get to add depth to that room. But when we saw CeeDee Lamb go down, you saw a guy like Justin Tolbert come up and Ferguson come and show to play. So now you're adding another head to that room. And this head is a guy, if he's not getting catches, he's going to be known. We've seen CD and Dak have that back and forth, but they have the relationship. George Pickens is coming into a room where he's the new guy. So is he going to throw his helmet? Is he going to pound on the sideline? It's going to be a lot for a first-year coach. And Toddy mentioned it. He is a guy coming in who is on the end of his rookie deal, so he needs to get paid. And I don't know if you guys know this, but he has the same agent as Micah. And Jerry Jones came out this summer and said, I don't even know who that is. So you're now dealing with this guy twice. Micah Parsons in you pay me or I'm a walk kind of guy. And
they gonna tackle.
I mean, I don't know. We're up there with you guys when it comes to paying guys. We'll pay you before kickoff in the locker room before game 1. I don't know how that's going to play out. But like I said, they're under the same agency. We saw with this summer with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, they got to pay on the same day. Is that the same thing that's going to happen in Dallas? I don't know. But the one guy that I feel the absolute worst for is Darius Slay. Because I know that $2 million to stay in Philly, it's sounding pretty lovely right now. Now you're paying for $10 million to team that's going to tank. So I'm happy you got your money. Respect, but
they got Will Howard, Kev. Come on, man.
Trust me, there's no one who has more respect for Will Howard. But this might be the first season where he has a losing record in Mike Tomlin. They just don't have enough. They're not putting out talent, especially in the division that they're in. They were able to make it to the playoffs. Like I mentioned, they had 2 different quarterbacks last year, and they still made the playoffs. I don't know if that's the case. And I know everyone's all the Steelers fans are hoping and praying that Aaron Rodgers walks through that door. Is he still going to walk through that door without George Pickens? So there's a lot of things that have to go from this aspect, but from the Cowboys side, it doesn't put no fear in my heart. You did all this. You traded all that capital just to still be the 3rd best team in the division. So
hold on, this is the best receiver duo in the NFC East. Come on, Kev, what you mean? CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. Come on,
what? I was hoping to say that because I remember a couple years ago, off our Super Bowl run, they brought in Stephon Gilmore. And Tony said, it's the best wide receiver. It's the best quarterback duo in the NFC East. We got Stephon Gilmore. We got Trayvon Diggs. So, it's nothing new to me. So, we're all good.
So Toddy, what? I'm sorry, Toddy. I didn't mean to overstep you, but I will just add one could argue that, you know, the Eagles might have the third best wide receiver duo in the NFC East with scary Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel. I mean, if we're just going to troll, then we're just going to troll.
Coming your way.
We're not worried about a running back.
Oh, all right. Well, he's not worried about a running back. And I want to follow up on a couple things that Kevin said, because the emergence of Jalen Tolbert really was great for the Cowboys. And it'll be interesting to see how he adjusts to being a true wide receiver 3 or even a 4 on this Cowboys team, because we know who 1 and 2 are now. George Pickens will not accept anything less than being number 2 on the Cowboys, and that's with all due respect to CeeDee Lamb, who's arguably a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. And when it comes to the Steelers letting go of guys, yeah, I mean, Chase Claypool, he was the dude on the Steelers. And then, yeah, exactly, Toddy. Now it's who? Where is he? Where did he go? We don't know, because he's been gone, because Mike Tomlin got the most out of him, and then there was nothing left. And so that's something that's really interesting about this move. And, you know, Kevin, I just have to mention too, I fully understand why you thought about Antonio Brown when it comes to the Jets, because that's the last time we saw Antonio Brown, as he was given the double peace sign as he was leaving MetLife Field.
Because oh yes, it was.
He was on the Bucs, but they played at the Jets, and then he gave the double peace sign, and he was out of there.
And he left.
Yeah, and we haven't seen Antonio Brown since, except for on social media tweeting out cracker of the day stuff, but then also tweeting out his private messages with Tom Brady on Instagram,
or with what's his name, Pac-Man. He tweeted out Pac-Man.
Yeah, exactly. And so it'll be interesting to see how this trade shakes out for the Steelers if they tank like Kevin thinks they will. And I'm assuming if they tank, that means Aaron Rodgers ends up retiring, because to me, it seems like Aaron Rodgers is either going to be a Steeler or he's going to retire. Doesn't really seem like there's an in-between there. Some people say the Vikings, he'll follow the Brett Favre path. I don't know. It seems to me like he's going to be a Steeler. But the one thing I will add about Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers being without George Pickens now is we did see about a month ago, maybe about 2 months ago, Aaron Rodgers was working out in LA with a Steelers wide receiver, but it was DK Metcalf, not George Pickens. And so if that was flipped, then I think that it would be a really big deal. But Aaron Rodgers was already working out with his wide receiver 1, as Kevin said, even before this trade. DK Metcalf was the wide receiver 1 on the Steelers. And so it'll be really interesting to see how this shakes out for both teams. Basically, as I said earlier, George Pickens gets traded for a 3rd-round pick. Cordell was saying in the group chat, I will not be happy with a 4th-round pick. Not sure how he feels about a 3rd. But before we move on, I will just introduce one of my favorite graphics of all time. And I think this is something we can all unanimously agree on. And that's the Dallas Cowboys cycle, where season starts, they win some games, fans get their hopes up, and they say, we done boys, this is our year. Then they choke in the playoffs, and as it's circled on the screen, we are here, because that's what pops up every time the Cowboys do make the playoffs. And so I'm expecting another Cowboys choke job, regardless of how well this pans out.
Cowboys win the division?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, you pull up them odds.
Toddy's on one today.
I just want to know I want to know what the odds are. What's the odds? They're probably Eagles probably the favorite.
It's the Eagles, and then it's the Commanders, and then the Giants and Cowboys fight for the bottoms.
Uh-oh.
Well, Mr. Dent,
sprinkle some on those little sprinkle on the boys.
Mr. Dent, as in Kevin and Alex's dad, says Aaron is washed. I guess we'll find out if he ends up going to Pittsburgh or even Minnesota and decides not to retire. But